This week's Binteresting video is literally the most rubbish project I've worked on to date. This is the general waste, the official Guinness World's Fastest wheelie bin at the moment, which the record stands at 55 mile an hour, but I have done 66 mile an hour now in the last month at Santa Pod.
We actually went faster despite nearly wiping out the timing tree. Still got nearly 66 mile an hour on that one.
It's named the General Waste after the General Lee Dodge Charger, which is also bright orange. We had to whittle down some punny names which were suggested. We had like Bin McQueen, we had Bin Diesel and Gone Bin 60 Seconds, and then a few others that were perhaps less politically correct. But yeah, ultimately settled on the General Waste. So the initial idea to build a wheelie bin actually came many moons ago. I was studying a garage and we used to have a lot smaller garage than this. It was just a twin garage, and my dad's car was in there and my car was in there. And I was saying to a friend that I fancied another project, but it had to be no bigger than a wheelie bin, because there was a wheelie bin in the corner. And then it's just sort of been in the back of my mind ever since. During COVID, a chap called Jennings, who built the first motorised wheelie bin and actually set the record originally for that. I think it was 44, 46 mile an hour, somewhere around that. After Andy, I got my backside in gear and decided to build a bin, and then just coincidentally about a month before my official record attempt, Chris Rollins in America built a 200cc 4-stroke bin. I think it was a 200, it might have been a 220, and he actually went 62 mile an hour and then toppled it.
Shit. He flipped like 4 times.
Did it really?
He flipped a ton, dude.
Did it flip?
Yeah, it was.
Wow. Look how, I must have been, oh, my wheels.
Jeez.
You get close up on that rim? Nice.
That's bit pretty good.
Yeah.
So it was about a month later I went out and set my record attempt, which it was an official Guinness record attempt, and got to 55 mile an hour, which beat Andy Jennings. So the bin is now in the Guinness World Book of Records. We have gone faster since, planning on updating the speed just to try and keep the others at bay, but I'm all for a little bit of healthy competition. I think it's good for the sport, good for the fans.
You've got no fans!
So it's not the most refined thing to get in and out of. I have had to take up yoga since, so generally stand on the back wheel, and then it's a hop inside. It is actually a standard size wheelie bin. It's a standard size family large, I think they call it. It's like a 300 litre maybe. It's slightly bigger than the Kirklees standard if you're from Kirklees. But there isn't exactly what I'd call ample room inside. My knees actually touch the front of the bin when I'm sat in here, and when I've got the leathers on, my bum's actually on the back as well, so I do only just fit in here, despite it looking like there is quite a lot of room. I sat as low as possible to keep the centre of gravity as low as possible for stability reasons. It does mean that I can duck down, and it makes such a difference once you get to the sort of 50 mile an hour mark where the square aerodynamics really come into it. You do find that if you duck down, the difference in speed, and it's just unbelievable. Generally, when I cross the finish line, rather than trying to slow it down with the brakes, I actually tend to just bring my shoulders up a little bit. The wind resistance actually slows the bin down quite a lot. So there's just the 4 bolts that hold the bin body onto the chassis. From a safety point of view, There's not really an FIA blue book to follow on this, so trying to figure out what's safest when you actually fall over at speed is a bit of a tricky one. You never low side in a wheelie bin, you always high side, which means that you're going over the top when you fall. You never skid and fall underneath like when you're on a motorbike. I did fall out of it once at around 30 mile an hour, and when I went over, I hit my shoulder on the floor. I put my arm out trying to break the fall and hit my shoulder on the floor. And then since then, the standard protocol has been to, if it does topple, just hook inside, so pull down and let the bin slide. Now, we've got a couple of scars on the bin from that, which is great at low speed, but as soon as you hit high speed, what I've been worried about the last few times that I've been out is that the wheels are actually, if it's slide on the floor, the wheels are going to dig in and try and rotate it. So I haven't to date fallen out of this at speed, but after sort of 50 mile an hour, it's been in the back of my head mentally preparing myself that if it does start, if I topple it, then push out and eject myself from the bin. I can just slide on the leathers and it's not going to, be the end of the world. Whereas I think if my head's at the top of this thing and it starts rolling, it's not going to be a pretty sight. The mounts that I was talking about previously, there's the 4 mounts on the bottom. I did think about mounting the back of the bin onto the seat post here and squaring it all up and maybe putting a steel or aluminium liner inside it. But I think it's best that it separates and disintegrates to spread yourself away from it if you do start rolling or come out of the thing at speed. That's how it works in my head. Whether that happens in principle, I'm not sure. So I'll take the bin body off and then you can have a look inside. You can see the trike setup that we've got. I just started getting into motorbikes when I first started building this trike, which is the reason that I went with the Suzuki GP 125 engine. I bought one of the bikes and it came with a few engine spares. I built a second spare engine and I was a bit lost what to do with it really. It was relatively stock at the time. I since bought another spare engine, which is the spare engine for the race days with this. Originally started out around 12 horsepower when we were first up at Elvington. It's probably been increased to around somewhere between 18 and 20 horsepower, I'd estimate now. When I was learning to ride the motorbikes, I wanted this to be something that you could get in and not have to think about how you ride it. So I kept traditional motorbike controls. We've got the brake on the right hand side, clutch on the left, and then on the bottom here we have the down is up for changing down and down is down for changing down.
Up is down. Well, that's just maddeningly unhelpful.
Down is up for changing up and down is down for changing down. I like to keep things as simple as possible so that you don't have to think about things when you're in a wheelie bit. And then other techie bits on the interior, I suppose, would be the stabiliser for the steering. That's fully adjustable. I dialed so much caster into the front wheel with the idea that I wanted it to go straight without my hands even on the wheel. Just with the idea that it constantly pull itself straight if I hit an undulation in the road or anything like that. Everything self-centres itself. So the braking system, it's a mountain bike brake. We're not doing repetitive braking on this, so the braking doesn't really have to be that brilliant. You're stopping once from speed effectively. I have actually managed to overheat this and boil the fluid on the road, but that's not something that we do very often, and it's in the back of my mind now that I need to be wary of that. Brake disc is from one of those 50cc Charles quads, which I originally built a 4-wheel variant of this, which was an absolute flop. I put so much caster on the front wheels and didn't think that when you turn the wheels, because of the caster, the camber gain effectively encouraged the bin to lean over into corners, so it was actually so much more unstable. The 3-wheel version is miles better, but live and learn. The expansion pipes, as calculated out as I can be with it, it works absolutely brilliantly when it comes onto the power band now. It hums along nicely, absolutely brilliant. Just a generic silencer off a Lambretta, just trying to keep the noise down a little bit. The exhaust, you can see how wide I had to go because of the shallow depth that I had during the creation of that expansion pipe. This is just where it's scraping on uneven road, so if you imagine how a road would sit on the bottom of these wheels, it is very close to the floor, so it just clips constantly. Doesn't help that I've used this on the road and I also drive it through pit paddocks, that sort of thing. It's not always on a racetrack. The wheelie bar, there's obvious gains to be had by having a lower wheelie bar and a longer wheelie bar. Now, one thing that I was unsure about how the Guinness team would react. Generally, they wanted the appearance of the wheelie bin to remain unaltered, silhouette of the wheelie bin to be the same. The wheelie bar, we could extend, we could have it lower to the ground, but I didn't want it to be accused of cheating or having too much stability during the record attempt, so we kept it short. It does really good wheelies when it sits up on this thing, and it looks amazing. Just as a crowd-pleasing aspect, Santa Pod have been really good at accommodating us and letting us run whenever we want. Obviously, it's mainly at their events, so I do like the idea of this being a bit of a crowd pleaser and keeping people interested, so that's why we kept the wheelie bar at that angle. Other modifications to the engine, the rotary valve opened it up. If you've watched the GP125 video that I did, it's very similar modification wise. So expansion pipe, opened up the rotary valve, mild port work to the barrel and to the engine casing itself, just to try and improve the engine flow, and then rejet the carburetor accordingly. If anybody has a dyno in West Yorkshire and fancies putting a wheelie bin on a dyno, I'd love to get a dyno printout just to see exactly what it's putting out. Might have to get creative how we do that. We could put a bigger wheel on or something, I'm not sure, but if anyone does fancy getting involved with that. And then the only other modification would be the CDI ignition system. So originally these are on a points type ignition. I swapped to the CDI just for reliability. The seat is just a generic mountain bike seat off Amazon, and then the fuel tank was a piece of stainless tube that I had kicking about, just welded an MGB filler neck onto there. It seems to be my go-to. I've had so many MGBs over the years that I just have loads of filler necks kicking about, so I just ended up welding one of those onto everything that I make. The stability issues became very apparent around 50 mile an hour. It became so sketchy at speed that we ended up actually putting a little bit of weight into this. So I've got some lead blocks on the front, I've got steel weights on the side, another steel weight underneath, and a lead bar as well that I cast from leftover wheel weights. Other thing as well underneath, of course, is the neons, which are essential if you have a motorised wheelie bin. So I maintained the original kickstart design from the Suzuki. So usually we've made this adapter which goes onto where the kickstart is, and usually we just put a handle in there to bring it back and kickstart it into life. The alternative, once it's warm, is we can just bump start it, but it doesn't do that very well in damp conditions. The main plans for the future would be to incorporate the boost, which I've been looking into. Leaf blower supercharging the 125 engine and then wiring up this variable boost button so that when I'm struggling for power I can just hit the boost button and it will give us a little nudge, shall we say. The reason for fitting that and maintaining the 125 is just purely around space. As you saw how tight it was when I was actually sat inside the bin, and if you actually look when I do sit on top of here, my foot is so close to the engine that it actually burns through my boots when I drive it. So go into a bigger engine, you could maybe fit a bigger single cylinder, but the problem is once you go past the 125, engines start to become a little bit expensive, just purely because it's a bigger engine, it's more desirable. I wouldn't be against going for a bigger engine, it's just a case of finding something that's reasonably priced, and just remember that this is a toy and I have plenty of other stuff, so something that's going on in the back of my mind. I get plenty of comments, people saying, oh, you should have fit a CB500 engine. Where are you putting it? Find me the real estate and I'll throw a bigger engine in there. So the other comment that I get a lot that's a bit of a bugbear is, why didn't you put the bin horizontal? It's a gentleman's agreement that anybody that's attending this record goes with the bin the right side up. I don't think the Guinness would allow it if you were laying it down anyway. It doesn't look like a wheelie bin, does it? How often do you see a wheelie bin laid down? I think it's a coward's way out if you do lay the bin down and think that that's a legit record attempt. So we'll squash that one now. Laying it down would fix a whole lot of problems. Obviously the stability issue, the square aerodynamics issue, and the logistics for transportation, because this thing being upright is an absolute pain to transport. It's okay if you have a pickup truck. Mine's not currently on the road. I've used Ben's in the past. He's been an absolute saint helping move it around. Theoretically, the top speed of this bin in fourth gear would be 79 mile an hour. The problem is getting it there. Elvington are quite expensive if you want to run up there. But Santa Pod are very accommodating, problem being you only have a quarter mile and it's a standing start, so potentially I could talk to Santa Pod, see if we could roll through the blocks to get a bit of a rolling start. But yeah, it should do 79 in fourth. It does actually have a fifth gear, but it's so long. The idea that the fifth gear is really long is it's redundant, and that we go for top speed attempt in fourth gear, which means we only need 3 gear changes during the quarter mile. As far as I'm aware, globally, this is the world's first wheelie bin to do wheelie bin donuts. Naturally, after building this device, the first thing that I thought was, would it do a donut? I don't actually have any other events planned for the bin in the next upcoming year. I wouldn't be against pulling it back out, but I do have a few other things that I'd like to do, so whether it does come out next year, I'm not sure, but I think it'll be a case of rebuild the bottom end that we blow up and then see what happens. Something will crop up, I'm sure. Lastly, I'd just like to say a huge thanks to everybody who's supported this venture. It's been a great, positive project to concentrate on over the last couple of years. Huge thanks to Ben and John Woodhead for all the machine work, all the help that they always give me with all my projects. I'd like to thank Santa Pod as well for being so accommodating. It's been absolutely brilliant over the last couple of years. Special shout out to the guys at the Drivers Collection who, when I did get the official record attempt with this, were straight on the bandwagon, super supportive, and gave me a show pass to bring the bin down to the Drivers Collection show. The amount of litter that I came back to when people had obviously just assumed that it was a normal bin, I think mainly children, and just thrown some old cups and things in there. So yeah, maybe a car show is not a good idea. If not, we need some sort of mesh screen, I think. But yeah, thanks again, guys. This week's Binteresting video This week's Binteresting video is literally the most rubbish project I've worked on to date. Finally, one that I don't have to trash.